Greetings, avatars, and welcome to this month's Hangout of the Avatar, our Postmortem for Release 24, and we're really excited to be with you today. This was a cool release because it marked 2 years of monthly releases, and here's to many, many more. Turning it over to my fantastic team and your fantastic team. Richard?
Yes, thank you, Gina, and thank you, everyone. It has been a great 2 years since the chicken room, and things have evolved a lot since then. I've been in playing with you. Many of you have seen me in the game playing over the last few days. It's been a real blast. The game and world and community is growing marvelously, and for that we have only to thank you. Thank you for providing us this opportunity to make this at all. Thank you for joining us in the creation process, not just with your dollars, but with your minds to come and join us online to experience and help guide what I feel very strongly now. This is a great AAA foundational game in the spirit of the games that we have all played together for the last 10 to 30 years. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Starr, Chris?
Chris?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to loving seeing all the good feedback on the release, and it sounds like people are actually thinking the balance is getting into the game. And I'll second what Richard said about the fans and helping out. And I've been doing game development for 20+ years, and honestly, I cannot imagine going back to how games have traditionally been developed. It is such a different experience working with the fans on things, and I look forward to even more of it. Starr?
Couldn't agree more. And this release, like Gina said, 2 years of this what we call co-development, where we pretty much blur the lines between who the developers are and who the audience is. We're all kind of a little bit of both. And I'm kind of with Chris on, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I don't ever want to go back. And it's a roller coaster, definitely. It's full of highs and there's some lows in there too. But at the end of the day, I think we're all wanting the same thing and moving towards the same target. And moving towards that same target got us a little excited this release. As I posted in my instructions, this release was supposed to have been a polish and performance release, but we all got a little excited about all the content that we could put in, and versus just talk about, well, we could do this and we could do that, we ended up getting carried away and just doing all of those things. And then we lost a little bit on what we had originally planned to do on the performance and polish side, but we're going to make that up later for sure. And we appreciate everyone's patience as we continue developing because, as we all know, this is taking a little longer than we originally had hoped, but we think that that extra length is getting us a better product, and we hope you share that opinion, and you seem to. So the response has been overwhelmingly towards at least from what we've seen, take your time, make the right product, don't try to rush it out the door, which is what we want to do too. So thank you for allowing us to do that, both through your opinions, but also through your funding of us. So, I know sometimes when we put things in the store, some people react and look at, wow, that's that's a lot of money for that thing. That is, at the end of the day, ones and zeros. But two things for that I'd like to say. One, those ones and zeros cost money to make. It takes a lot of hours to make that content. And because we don't have a publisher or traditional investment, that is the only way that we are funding the product. And so that's how those prices are set. The prices are set of what we need to continue developing forward. So thank you for understanding that. Thank you for being patient. Thank those of you who are willing to pay those dollars, and we're being very careful as much as we can to make sure that those things we're putting up in the store are more vanity items than power items. And as you may have noticed, we're trying to be more and more conscious about putting versions of those items in the game that are craftable in addition to the version that's in the store. So we're trying to do a good balance of, yes, you can buy this version on the store, but you could also craft it or find it through a quest in the game as well. So trying to achieve a balance there. Hopefully you guys noticed that. And let's start out with a bang. Let's give out a prize. As you've noticed, we've the prizes for the last few Hangouts, we've been highlighting some of the community events that happen. And so one of those community events was Joseph Drayson, who was in our last Hangout as a guest appearance. And that was the Festival of the Silver Serpent, and this was a commemorative coin that was done by the Master of Mint, Frank Baxley, for that event. So we're giving away one of these Festival of the Silver Serpent coins.
And the winner is Sean Silverfoot.
How appropriate.
Hi, Sean.
Silverfoot.
And get your addresses in early. I actually, as Starr shakes his finger at me, have not shipped the last releases. Well, it's such a short release, it feels like it was just yesterday we did the last Hangout. But if you guys get the addresses in for this new release, I'll make sure these all get out by Christmas and get to everyone, even the overseas people, by Christmas. So get those addresses in.
Whoa. Wow, that's some big talk. That's some big talk. We'll see. That's awesome. All right, let's start with the questions.
Okay, and before I move over to questions, just a couple of things to remind you. If you do win a prize, you do have to have a recognizable username in chat. Last month, we literally had a username that had almost a dozen different people with either that username as a display name or a variation of that username or had numbers after it. And I literally had to go and see when your last activity on the website was to track you down. So make sure I can identify you, and I will send out emails requesting your address to ship out the items by Friday afternoon sometime. So let's move on. Our first question comes from the website, and it's from Kubatries. He wants to know what our plans are regarding Overland map interactivity.
Oh, right. So, and part of that question included things like being able to harvest resources on the overworld and having combat on the overworld. And those are all very interesting things, but all of those things like combat and harvest, gathering resources are things that we want to happen inside actual scenes. And not on the overworld. With that said, the one missing component that we don't yet have in the overworld that we showed during the Kickstarter with our prototype and was present in the old school Ultimas is the concept of a roving encounter. So that is on our list for episode 1 is to have visible roving encounters on the overworld. So you might see a wagon that if you are able to, get to it in the same location of it on the overworld, that might be a wandering merchant. You might see a pack of wolves or a flying dragon or a phoenix or some other creature, and if you get near them, that would trigger an encounter with them. So that's still on the roadmap. But that's going to be most of the limit of interactivity on the overworld. Although you can see other players, you can chat with other players. All of that works currently. So there is some level of interactivity. We just don't want it to be actual game-like activities like fighting and gathering. Okay.
Our next question comes from Baron Drakis, and I think I pronounced that right this time. He wants to know when custom Duke heads, that sounds weird, that pledge reward will be put into the game.
That is a great question. We have that currently on the schedule, either the very end of Q1, so March, or maybe the very beginning of Q2. So March, April is when the functionality will be coming online, but then there's a lot of content that needs to be made. So we'll be probably starting that content creation around the same time that the tech to support it comes online. So,
and there's a lot of work going on right now. The biggest performance drain in the game is games when you have a lot of characters together. It's because of how we created characters. So we didn't want to push that up too much just because the underlying system would likely change. So you guys can blame me to some extent on that, although I prefer to blame Starr for everything.
Yeah, and we're going to answer a couple of questions later about like player-owned talents and things like that. And we're having to make a lot of tuning choices right now based on performance, and that's one of them too. Is like doing the tech to support this and building the content isn't crazy technically, but it would have a significant impact on performance because it would be yet another unique thing to draw to the screen. So we're holding off on it right now until we can get some more performance optimizations in. But it will happen.
Doom Angel would like to know, do affinities affect an avatar's aggro in relation to respective mobiles?
And by affinities, I think she was attunement, right? And right now, they don't have any effect. So, but it's a really interesting idea that sparked off some conversations on our side. It would be, depending on what effect that would have, that could be a little bit of work or tons and tons and tons of work, because it might cause us to have to revisit scenes and adjust them if, for instance, having the max in death attunement made it so undead didn't aggro on you. Well, that would probably affect some level design, especially in levels that were exclusively filled with undead, because that basically means you could just sort of waltz through there and no one would attack you. So there's some significant game balance implications of that. With that said, I do really think there's some interesting things to be done there of attunement affecting behaviors of creatures that would be. So, for instance, undead with death magic, fire elementals with any of the elemental magic, that kind of thing. So, a very interesting idea. We would love to do something with it, as long as it didn't cause some serious imbalances.
Yeah, and remember attunement, if you have a high attunement, like for instance, if you're high death magic attunement, that means you're not only more powerful with your death magic, but you're also more resistant to other people's death magic. So while they won't be friendly with you right now, it should be you should be more resistant to the damage that they might do if you have a high attunement.
Yeah, and this isn't a question, but talking about the undead made me want to talk about something that a bunch of us are pretty excited about. A change that's going into R25 is how the undead resurrection behavior, which is I think probably the least favorite creature behavior of players in the game right now. So the way it's going to work starting in release 25 is undead won't resurrect on their own. A undead mage, either a skeletal mage or a lich, has to raise them. And so they're not going to do it spontaneously on their own anymore. The mages will resurrect them, so you're going to want to take out those mages so they're not resurrecting their companions and allies. But also, we're still retaining some of the other rules, so if you kill them with magic, that will block the ability for the mage to resurrect them. So some of that strategy that players have already learned will still be in effect.
Yeah, and players should know that the Searing Ray change that I put in last release or release before that, so it did extra damage against undead, that was purely in response to me doing one of my long play sessions where I went to play as a player, which I try to do occasionally, without using any cheat commands, dev command stuff, and fighting undead at a control point where you kill him, he stands up, you kill him, you stand up. That is the whole reason I added in that Searing Ray extra damage, because I was getting frustrated as a player trying to play as a player. I think this is also a much, much better change that adds strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Is it time for a prize? And maybe we can take a question from the chat room.
Yeah, let's do an add-on store credit.
Winner of the add-on store credit is Jaxton, Jaxton.
Hooray for Jackson!
All right. Enjoy your cat, or whatever $10 add-on store thing you choose to purchase.
Did you want to go ahead and pull a question from the chat room?
Oh, right. We don't want to neglect those guys and ladies. Budner. So Budner wants to have some, not exactly questions, but more like feature requests, but we'll talk about them. So one is, can we extend the range of the radio? Yes, we can. We'll put in a request to that. And number two, can we have a stone basement for the row houses, because currently all that's available is the stone and timber. Sure, it won't. I've seen that request a bunch of times in the forums. Just a warning, it won't be anytime soon. But yes, we can do that. The biggest challenge with row lots is because they are so narrow. The way that stone kit works, with the thickness of the walls and things like that, if we use stairs, it would take up a bunch of the space in those. So if we did a stone row basement, it would have to, each floor would have to be connected by ladders, or else most of the floor space would be used up with stairs. So heads up, if we do make one, it will be connected with ladders, not stairs. So.
Fireman's bowl. Just put a big fireman's bowl down it. You get the.
Yes, because that pole would not. Never mind. I'm just going to keep that to myself. Okay, next question.
I think I can read your mind.
Yes.
Our next question is from Moiseev Trudon, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but he would like to know about the interactivity or our intentions of making gathering nodes more interactive.
Yes, this question has come up periodically, especially because when you're trying to mine the higher level nodes, or when your skill levels are low, it can take a little bit of time to mine out a node. It's still seconds, not minutes, so it's not a ton of time. But when you're doing a bunch in a row, I understand that that's a bunch of time. Right now for episode 1, we're not, as far as interactivity, we're not planning anything like a, say, mini game of like timing your pickaxe strikes or anything like that. However, we do have ideas and plans for certain types of resources having certain reactions that could happen. So, or like, we have the concept of events with crafting. We have discussed having something similar with nodes, or like, for instance, if you're mining a node for like sulfurous ash, there's a potential that you'll release a cloud of noxious fumes that might damage you, things like that. So there may be some event type stuff like that, but not, as far as level of interactivity, it's not going to be like a mini game.
Our next question, before I get to our next question, actually, just a reminder that I don't jump around from different tabs, so if you private message me at all during one of these Hangouts, please don't feel bad if I don't get back to you. I only monitor the main chat room for questions. It's just so much jumping between the different screens. It takes away, and I lose track and get lost, and then you guys, have dead air, and you don't want that. Okay, Wolfdom would like to know, actually this is a little bit more of a feature request, he would like player-owned town owners the ability to adjust their entrance and exit points in their town. And that was actually liked by several people, so.
Yeah, and so this has come up a lot because right now, since all the player-owned towns are based on templates, everyone appears at the same location. So we do have on the schedule the ability for players to select from a set of placed entrance points. Because player-owned towns have other players in them living there, we can't provide a fully dynamic ability for a player-owned town owner to place down entrances or exits wherever they want, because they could do things like, well, one, remove all the exits, trap people in the town, or they could do fun things that, like, have their entrance surrounded by a wall. So probably not going to allow that, but we are going to go in and make sure there are more than one entrance location in each town. I think our minimum goal is somewhere between 4 and 8 locations in each template, and then player-owned town owners will be able to choose one of those entrance points as the default entrance point. So yes, it's coming, and it definitely sometime in the first quarter, maybe as soon as January.
I like the idea of having a town where you wall off the exits and call it Hotel California is the name of the town.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might have talked about that.
Or Roach Hotel, isn't that the other one? Yeah. Roaches come in, but they don't come out. Yeah.
Let's do one more question from the website and then move into a chat question. The next one is from Mind Blast, and he wants to know if there'll be an option to flag yourself as a role player.
Well, I hope everyone is a role player.
Indeed.
And I think the question also talked about things like sorting everyone who was role-playing on the same server and things like that. Well, everyone is on the same server in our game, although I could see in our context wanting that to be something that factors into the sorting algorithm in open multiplayer.
Which is good.
That's in our current plans. Not saying that we wouldn't eventually offer some sort of option like that. Right now you could sort of do something like that by making sure everybody that's on your friends list, you consider them to also be role players. So you can sort of manually do it by playing in friends mode. But other than that, we don't have plans to create a role-playing tag.
And if you want to message me with more details afterwards, I'll be in the chat room after this. But if you're just looking for things like, I know some games do it where if you have the role-playing flag set, your name is a different color so you can spot role players. Because that type of stuff is more low-hanging fruit, so you can identify yourself as a role player.
All right, let's pick one from the chat. And scanning. Merkster wants to know, how is the work towards working on groups of mobs and aggro going, as far as it's pretty impossible to kite out one mob, they all gang up on you. Well,
there's still a rule in there right now for the AI that is, if you aggro one in a spawn group, they all aggro. It's a forced thing that it doesn't matter if you pull them apart. We will get that addressed. I don't know if it's on R24 or not. R25, sorry. That was kind of the goal, was get it in for R25, but a bunch of other AI requests and items came up. But this is part of why there's the distract skill, which I don't know how many people have played with it, but it lets you separate AIs by distracting them. And that's the goal. It won't be too long. I don't know if it'll be R25, but hopefully by R26 for sure. We'll be able to let you split groups of mobs, which is really important especially if you're trying to play alone or solo. You don't want to try to take on everything at once.
With that said, I mean, part of what we've got, what we want is by design, and if the intelligent humanoids, well, actually any creature, especially pack creatures, if one does something, the others are going to notice that other one, like, why is Fred wandering off? Like, most of the time, they're not just going to go, it's probably fine. They're going to want to do it too. So Richard's answer would be, yeah, that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. But we do understand. So we're probably never going to tune the AI so that you can pick them off just without doing anything special. But like Chris said, using skills to do that is definitely something we need to create more support for.
Well said.
And I think we'll do a prize. So last Hangout, you guys remember we talked about the Hearth of Britannia event. So the very first one, there were these collector cards that were made. This is a Blackthorn collector's card, some ugly dude on it. By the way, application.
Your goatee fell off.
I know. That was back in the goatee time, pre-soul patch only. As basically the facial hair shrinks over time. Started as a Van Dyke, then went to a goatee. Now it's a soul patch. I don't think I can go much smaller than that. So Hoblock 3 applications are now open. So those of you who are interested in that event, they are pretty amazing. Rustic Dragon does an incredible job organizing those events. They are great. Anyway, so that's the prize, a Blackthorn collectible Hearth of the card.
And the winner of the card is Shades 2585.
All right.
Hey, Shades 2585.
And I will autograph that for you, Shades. All right. Let's take another question from chat, and then we'll go back to website. Let's see. Monkey Smack wants to know, will crafting crits include more than just a strength bonus, and how will crits work at higher crafting levels? Yeah, so by the result, the mod that you get from the critical success in crafting is a placeholder. It is literally in there to show that the critical success worked. And yeah, it's only strength. So it'll be everything you can imagine, and it'll be linked to the kind of material you're using and the kind of object you're making. So there will be hundreds of different critical successes, and they will be more powerful at higher levels. All that's coming. What's in there is just placeholder.
Smoker KGB has some questions about the Overworld map and weather and scene lighting. So I'm going to ask them all, and you guys can answer them however you wish. Will weather and scene lighting be adjusted? He's seen it rain with full daylight and shadows under dark skies. He would also like to know if day and night scenes will be synced to the Overland map. And finally, he wants to know about that jet airliner, and will it ever go away?
Oh yes, so this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Those of you who have been, I'll answer the last one first, because those of you who follow our stand-up notes, which are now fully public, thank you for players who requested that we do that. We think it's a much better thing. But in the stand-up notes, some of you may have noticed that we actually finally have hired a full-time sound effects contractor, which we're all why are you saying boo?
Because my barking crocodiles and my hissing spider and Land of the Lost reference in the forest sounds where you get the plane going over the Land of the Lost. Anybody?
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's what I tell people is that's why that's in there. It's actually in there because I didn't notice it. I found that it was sound.
Yeah, so things like jet airliners in our forest ambient sound are, you get what you pay for. So downloading lots of free content off the internet results in things like that. So
my beautiful work.
Yes. So all of Chris's beautiful work that he did with the sound effects and the stuff that we got for free is all going to be undone and made beautiful. So the jet airline will no longer be heard in the forest ambient scene. But the highest priority, the very first thing the sound effects guy has fixed for us is that damned crate breaking sound that sounds like a gunshot. So it will actually finally sound like a crate being smashed. I'm very, very excited. However, it is sad because Rick Chaos and I share an office, and we would occasionally troll each other by finding a place that had lots of crates and just making that noise over and over and over again just to drive the other one crazy. So we won't be able to do that to each other.
You should just make it your ringtone now.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. That is great. So every time I get a call, you would hear that noise? That's good. Except it would make me angry, so I don't want to do that. All right, so back to the other questions. So All of the light settings related and time of day settings are still being developed. That's listed in our known issues. We're still working on those. So any discrepancies you see where some scenes and overland aren't being synced, that's where those are the few. It should be very few now, but the few scenes where we haven't propagated the new sky to. And most of those at this point, I think the only ones that are still that case are maybe some of the ones in the Vale, because those old scenes we rarely go back to visit. Unless they completely break. Like we discovered a bunch of them were missing resurrection arcs. So that's just a in development kind of thing.
There's also a bug that's still in there for a number of scenes this release where the light for a scene was getting applied twice, and the sky was double bright as well. So that's if you saw any skies that felt like they were just over bright and washed out, that's probably what that was. We're fixing those.
All right. Another question.
There's one more.
Oh wait, there was? What?
Will scenes day-night ever be synced to
No,
the
that's what I
overworld?
just said. No,
Oh,
that's
okay.
what- yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was checking my notes. Rufus would like to know, and Rufus, I'm sorry, but I can never pronounce your last name, so I'm not even trying it anymore. And I've seen this question come up in the chat room a couple times. He would like to know about the establishment of central markets in towns.
Yeah, so currently, right now, a player vendor needs to be placed on a player's property. And we know that this central market request has come up a few times. Right now, that's not on our plans for episode 1. But there's a lot of things that are coming down the pike, and already we're seeing some improvements on how player vendors work. I know that there was a follow-up question asking for an increase in the number of vendors that can be placed. One big change that's actually going in R25 is we are doubling the item limits for all vendors. That's public vendors and player vendors. So you'll be able to put twice as many items in those vendors.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. No, I'd just like to throw out a comment too about the players' use of vendors. As I've been playing in the live version of the game over the last few days, I've been out, using up enough of my natural resources or my carried resources that I've needed to go restock. And I've actually found the player vendors in places like Owl's Head in particular are already really well organized and well placed. And any of you that are playing might already see Lord British coming and buying things at your shops because that was the most conveniently located and had the best equipment for me to restock with. So it's actually really great to see the player economy coming online like that, and I look forward to seeing more of your vendors through the whole game.
And that was one of the discussion points for why we didn't prioritize that higher, is as soon as we have a universal all vendors are here, it devalues some of the prime lots, right where you enter a map or wherever you have to go through to get to town. It makes those locations a little less valuable. People are always just going to go to the group vendor rather than see individuals. So.
And it destroys one of the unique elements of that we had in Ultima Online. We're trying to recreate here is the idea of creating a shop. At the point where you create like a central market, it sort of devolves down to, well, you might as well just have a menu that lists all the vendors, and then you pick from that menu, and versus having a propped out bookshop with books on the shelves and a vendor that's selling player-made books, and when the player is online, he's there hosting and talking about his wares and things like that. You lose all of that, and so we're trying to weigh more heavily on the player shop idea, not the marketplace. So there you go. I guess I could take another one from chat. Let's see. Drunk Chris.
I was going to say, don't answer that one purely on the name alone.
I like Drunk Chris. But they haven't challenged us to drink for money recently.
They were challenging me in chat.
They were?
Yeah.
Why are we drinking?
I get some Scorpion juice.
We could get some Scorpion juice. If there's money spent, we might do it. Anyway, let's see. Drunk Chris wants to know, well, it's a feature request, actually. Oh, and they even say it's a feature request. Thank you for being honest there. Can we change the friends list to show whether friends are in open, friends, or single player online so we don't bug our friends when they are trying to solo? Actually, that's a good tweak, but and we'll definitely get that on the list. However, we're not going to put it on the list until we implement the, quote, real friend system, because what we've got right now is more of a follow system. It's more.
When is that, by the way? I don't remember when that shows up on our schedule.
That's not for a little while.
Yeah. Okay.
But right now, what we've got is what eventually will be called the acquaintance system, which is where it's just a one-way thing where you can basically follow someone. And if we exposed even more data there about like what mode they're playing in, we don't want people to be able to have that information without you explicitly agreeing to it. So when we do the friends overhaul, where there will be basically two levels. There'll be what you have now, which is acquaintance, and then there'll be true friends list, where both parties have to agree, kind of like Facebook style. At that point, we can add these extra stats. So we lost Gina. She blue screened. So give us a moment while we scramble to get the questions up on.
Here, I have some here.
Okay. So where were we? Oh, look, you're staying up. Look at this.
I know, it's crazy.
Okay, so. Oh, violation. Oh, good. These are okay. So we're on the violation. Violation asks, do we plan on adjusting low-end ranged and magic build survivability while grinding? And this question came up because, as Chris sort of mentioned, we heard from players we spent some time this release really trying to get a better balance achieved between the different builds and the different characters and different skills and spells and armor and all that stuff. And we're getting closer for sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things is I think we have it balanced for mid to high range, and I know the PvPers have actually spoken out and said things are much more balanced in terms of like the PvP tournaments and all that type of stuff going on. I think the area where we still need a little more balance and survivability is on the lower end, which actually what I will probably be doing for R25. I've already written down the math. I need to plug it in, but adjusting the hit point and focus calculations so at lower levels you have more hit points, but keeping the high end where it is. Basically making lower, it'll also flatten out the hit point and focus curve a little bit, which I think a lot of people have been requesting anyways, just so there's less discrepancy between, people who are level 10 and people who are level 50. We'll get a little more survivability, but it's getting close.
All right. I think we're going to do another add-on store credit. If you would be so kind, Lum the Mad.
Raven Swiftbow. Raven Swiftbow wins $10 add-on store credit.
Raven Swiftbow.
Congratulations, Raven. And Lum, while I have you, since we lost FireLotus, would you be able to periodically grab some questions from the chat room and throw them up in the little chat area here on the Hangout?
Will do.
Thank you so much. All right, another question from Violation. It's actually two questions around the same thing. The first question is, do you guys plan to push new content in as soon as possible between releases, or do we plan to stay on a larger monthly scheme like you have in the past to drive larger weekends? So, and then his next one is, do you guys track live while servers are online? Do we track changes like phishing chance and other sliders between patches to aid bug reporting and feedback? So I think there was a perception there on Violation's part that we were doing major content updates. Well, two. One, major content updates without a patch, which we're not doing. I mean, we pretty much patch everything. I mean, there's a few things we can change server side, but almost everything is done through a patch. And as far as doing things in between patches, well, we actually consider that Thursday through Monday, like one big sort of release window. So we do push changes in that window, but we don't have any plans to do any updates in between those monthly releases. However, again, worth repeating that we do plan to do monthly releases all the time.
And we are updating our build process to make the patches easy.